Hey y'all, welcome to the Let's Be Real podcast with Taylor Jones. Today I have my little brother.
Hello.
And he's been on the podcast before, I guess 3 years ago. He was 16, now he's 19. So I'm so excited to have him on here just to see how his mindset's changed. And I'm super excited to have him on.
Oh yeah, no, I'm ready to talk about some real stuff with Taylor Jones. Maybe we'll see a cameo from Carter or something, who knows?
Oh yeah, maybe. Jake's in the back room with him, and hopefully he doesn't scream during this, but fingers crossed.
If it's a good enough movie, they've been watching all the Pixar movies. So
yeah, Jake's been watching Toy Story, Monsters Inc., the classics. He's got to do that. But yeah, maybe we'll see a cameo from Carter.
Maybe.
So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm super excited because last time Colton was on, I asked the same question, like what's a piece of advice that's impacted him in his life, and I'm super excited to see another piece of advice. So what's another piece of advice that's impacted you that you think could impact someone else?
Whenever you asked me that question, it was kind of weird. I had something that I was going to say, and it was kind of like a fortune cookie statement, because it was like a little sentence, and I was like, that just seems too like I don't know, that's just not me. So I thought about it for a little bit. I was like, what's really been affecting me recently? And I've been thinking about the importance of self-evaluation, because often I used to assume that I was the victim of my situation. But when I really looked back at the path that I took to where I was in those places, I found that there were little things that I decided to just disregard. They strayed me to where I was. So whenever I started fixing all the little things, big changes happened, and I stopped pointing fingers at people.
Oh, that's good. So. Yeah, I think it's really important to not have a victim mentality about everything. And if you do feel like you are having that mentality, no matter what mentality you have, it's great to self-reflect and kind of see where your heart's at, where your mental health's at, and just kind of to be able to overcome things and then to better yourself. Because people that don't self-reflect, they really don't grow, and you get prideful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, you can tell where someone's heart is at, and I knew where my heart was at. Like I used to, whenever something bad would happen, I'd always point the finger. I was like, oh, you. And so now whenever something happens, regardless of whether off instinct I feel like it was their fault maybe, I point the finger at myself and think, well, what was it that I did that kind of led me here? And I feel like that not only reduces the amount of arguments that I have with people, because I can empathize with people now, but it really helps you understand your position and everything. You don't have to be mad at people. You can be content within yourself because you understand everything better. You're not just, like I said, pointing fingers at people.
Exactly. And a lot of times you point fingers at people because you're insecure about something. I know I've been there. Yep. I know for sure I've been there in several instances. And I know, especially as I became a young adult, I felt kind of prideful of myself, I need to set things straight this way because I'm an adult now. And I didn't really know how to always handle adult conflict. Do you know what I mean? And so the best thing you can do is self-reflect on yourself. And I had talked about in the episode with Sarah Bratcher about handling conflict, about evaluating your heart and seeing where your heart's at. Search my heart, oh God, and lead me away from any offensive thoughts that I have. It was similar to that. And that's so true. You need to ask God to get into your heart about every situation, whether it's the way you're thinking about, you're getting negative in your relationship with someone and you're being mean to them, or you're about to confront someone about something. It's always important to self-reflect and see where your heart's at, and to make sure your heart is not going to go in with pride and offensiveness, and just always do things out of love. And it's so good to self-reflect and set those boundaries. That's so good. I love that. And speaking of self-reflection, mindset, all the things. So our last podcast, you were 16, and that was when we were talking, it was your second knee surgery or your third?
It's the second, yeah.
Yeah, second knee surgery. You've now had four.
Yeah. I had another one 2 months ago.
3 serious ones. One, thank goodness it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't as bad for sure. But you were 16. You had 2 knee surgeries at that point in your life, and you had such great advice on mindset and negative mindsets you may have had and positive ones you had. And so I'd love for you to talk now that you're 19, about to be 20, finished your first year of college. You've obviously grown a lot as a young man. I just want to know your mindset, where it's at now, and has your mindset changed with each surgery that you've had, given you've had 4 at this point?
So it really has changed. It's kind of weird to look back at the first podcast, actually, because whenever we did it together, I was really unaware of where I was at the time.
But you thought you were.
I thought I
we
knew.
all do that.
I thought I had everything figured out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And 3 years later, like, I'm still figuring out stuff now, you know. But that was after the second surgery, and I really made it seem like I was projecting like I had contentness within myself. But in reality, I had no idea how bad off I was at the time, you know. Like, but when the Toller Baptist youth pastor Michael, shout out Pastor Michael.
We love Michael.
We love Michael. Great guy. He asked me to share my testimony with the youth. And it's actually really funny because he asked me to share my testimony, and I kind of put it in this box that, oh, this is the story, but I didn't realize that it's an ongoing thing, your testimony, and that's kind of what I talked about. We won't get too far into that. But I really kind of self-reflected, going back to that, and understood where I was at after each surgery because, you know, and we won't go into super depth about each because we kind of did that in the last one with the first two. We talked about it for a while.
This is a reminder. Go listen to the last podcast called Glory in Your Suffering.
No, that was a good one. You know, like I said, we won't go into super depth like about everything, all the specifics. But I could say, I think one word to kind of sum up my feelings after each surgery. After the first, I would say I was broken. If I'm being honest, whenever I reflected, I found out that I was just broken. My spirit was broken. I distanced myself from God. And I did say that in the last podcast, but I don't really think I understood the scope because I was so, I had an ego, you know, with football, and that ego had to be broken. And so God's humbled me over and over and over again. And finally I'm realizing, okay, got to stick to golf. But, you know, so, and I distanced myself from God after the first. After the second, which was my junior year, I would say I was resentful. I remember the first words that I said whenever it happened again was, why me? And we did talk about that with the last one. I kept yelling, why me? You know, I was resentful, and I decided to take the humbling that God was giving me, and I made it seem like it was unjust. I decided that what he was doing wasn't right, if I'm being completely honest. And in the last podcast, I made it seem like I was really happy with God. I was not. Whenever I look back at it, and, you know, that makes me sad, but that's the truth. And
I love it. I love the honesty.
And the third one was actually really interesting because whenever it happened on the field, it was actually really weird because, you know, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I wasn't sad, I wasn't mad. Like, the word for the feeling that I had was peace. God was just speaking peace over me, but I didn't know what to do with the peace he gave me, and which would come actually with the most recent surgery about 2 months ago, whenever this happened. So Michael actually asked me to share my testimony, like I said, and then that night is whenever I heard it again playing basketball. And I'm like, what? Like, now I got to change my testimony? Like, what? But, like, it really made me reflect and understand what to do with the peace. You know, I found out in order to use the peace that God was providing, all I had to do was humble the way that I was seeking God.
That's good.
Because I came before him in a different manner. You know, instead of saying, please heal my leg, God, I would say, God, let your will be done. And, you know, it has been done because I have peace and contentness within myself now, which I can honestly say now. I'm not lying to you all this time. And I didn't mean to lie to you all this time. Last time. I just didn't know where I was, really.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one thing that took me a while to understand is that his will is not always to heal your body, you know, but to strengthen your mind. I was asking the wrong questions, and I was getting the wrong answers because you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong answers. You play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes.
Yep.
And,
That's
you know,
good.
That's where I was at. And I feel like I've really grasped the way I talk to God now. And I think about it. I'm conscious about it.
That's so good. And I love how you're being so honest right now about even in the last podcast. I know in that moment when we had the podcast, you had felt those certain things. And maybe like you can feel like you can be on a high and then the devil can destroy that so quickly. And I even know looking back for me in high school, I thought that I was really, really strong in my faith. But then when I got to college, I was like, wait, that is crazy. I don't even feel like I was near as strong as I am now. Like God's constantly refining you and making you better. And so, I mean, obviously when you were 16, you still had a lot of things to go through and learn now that you're an adult. Yeah. And it's so great that your mindset, like you've acknowledged those mindsets, like when you were broken and whenever you felt like you needed to get peace or resentful or anything, like all those different mindsets, that's God refining you and growing you as a person. And that's so great also that you started out talking about self-reflection. It's so great to self-reflect in the past so you can learn from that and grow from that. And I just think that's so admirable. That's going to touch a lot of people that may even feel like, wait, I feel like I may be blind to how I really am feeling, or maybe having false confidence in myself about certain things when I really need to give up that cross and give that to God. And, self-reflections, is always great. And you obviously went through a few different funks with all of those 4 knee surgeries. And I feel like a lot of people go through funks in their life of maybe they're, trying to chase their dreams and the door keeps getting shut with that. Or maybe they're in a relationship and it doesn't seem like it's working out, or they keep failing a test, or they're having to change their major in college, or they don't know what they want to do after high school. Like there's a bunch of different funks, or maybe something's going on with a family member or a friendship. There's so many different funks in life. And what do you have to say, or what advice do you have to give to people that maybe feel like they're in a funk in their life?
I would say that all have fallen short. And something that I would harp on, and it kept me from really hearing God whenever I would call out, was realizing that fact that all have fallen short. You aren't the only one. And we decide to kind of disregard that sometimes. Like, it's one of the biggest Bible verses ever. And whenever something bad happens, we don't realize that everyone falls short. And so instead of harping on it, God didn't design you to sit and sin and self-loathe. Self-talk is a big thing that I had to work on, especially after that podcast, actually, because I was just feeding myself just junk food, just horrible things for me, just telling myself, oh, you're not enough. What you're doing is not good for you. And some of the things I was doing were not good for me. But that's something I had to work on. And after I switched the way I talked to myself, I saw amazing things happen in every single area of my life. Instead of saying, wow, I'm a horrible man for drinking again, or for falling back into this sin, I would say, what's a plan I can make with God to be able to look back in a year and appreciate the fact that I'm better off than I was? Because once again, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. Some verses I really like are Matthew 14:29-31. It's where Jesus is walking on water. Some crazy stuff's going on. Jesus walking on the water, and he asked Peter to join him. We all know Peter. He's a very godly, strong-willed man. Whenever you hear Peter, you're like, wow, that's a pretty cool guy. And so Jesus said, come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But whenever he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out to the Lord, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. He said, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And so even Peter doubted. Even Peter saw the wind. He saw the expanse of the sea, and he was like, this is too much. And a lot of the times, whenever we're in that sin, we think, oh, this is too much. I can't get out of it. I'm too deep. I've been an alcoholic. I've been a drug addict. I've been a porn addict, that kind of thing. Like, you just tell yourself all these things that, oh, I've been in it too long, and you drown in it. And we think the wind is too strong. You think the water is too expansive. You let all those negative thoughts control your path. You're bound to fall. You're bound to sink. If Peter would have just trusted in God, he wouldn't have sunk. Yeah. He was walking on water.
And once he asked for him and reached out his hand, God was right there to pull him up.
Exactly.
And I love that analogy of like Peter sinking, and then God, he lifts you up, and he takes you out of the trenches, and he picks you up while you're sinking, like from sinking, Well, I feel like a lot of people, like, or even myself, like when you go through a hard time, you're sinking. You're like Peter. And if you get caught up in that, you can, keep sinking, and then your life can keep getting worse and worse. But if you change your mindset to, God, just help me, and reach out your hand towards God, pick up your cross, give it to God, and let your ego aside and say, Lord, I need you. I can't handle everything on my own. And I just love that analogy. It's so good. And I feel like a lot of people, are going through similar things, like I had said before. Like, people are maybe chasing their dreams and the door keeps getting shut. Do not stop. Keep going, because I promise you that God, like, just have faith in God. In the good times, you need to have faith in God. In the bad times, you need to have faith in God. And those don't define you. Those grow you as a person. And those are literally refining you. And God knows that door is being shut right now, not because it's going to be shut forever, but because he has something else coming for you. And it may be that the door's shut because he has something different for you, or maybe that he has the door shut because he knows you're not ready yet and he needs to prepare you for something, and prepare you for that destiny that he has for you. And I just love that. That's so good. And so many people, amen. Fist bump. We just fist bumped. That's so great.
Podcast.
I love it. But yeah, I just encourage y'all to just lean on God whenever times are hard and when times are great. Like, just to have faith in him, because but God, like, always know that, like, oh, my life stinks, this and this, but God can fix it. God can fix a broken marriage. God can fix your friendship. God can fix a toxic relationship. God can fix your family. He can fix your leg and your mindset with that, and how you had different dreams before those things happen. And he's refined you as a young man and made you into something you never even realized that you'd become. But God, that's just so great. And then, so I know that, like, we go through like hardships sometimes. Well, sometimes your hardships are bigger than you. And what I mean by that is sometimes people need to see you go through hardships to see the way you get up and the way you react to that, and that influences their life. Like, everything in your life is bigger than yourself. Like, God woke you up this morning and kept you alive today because you're going to impact someone else's life. And I think that's so important to realize your hardships aren't just you, just like how you mentioned earlier. It's not just you that's been through things. Everyone's been through things, and it's all about the way you get up and the way that you react to those things that really impact other people without even realizing it. And I just encourage you to live your life like trying to be an example to others and a light to others, because we have such limited time on earth, and it's just so important to get up from those hardships and be a light to someone, and that'll make your life better, and that could totally save someone else's too. So yeah, that's just so good.
Well, also, I watched a podcast with Tom Hanks, and it was a bunch of really cool guys, I guess. And so they're talking about, just life and everything. And then Tom Hanks said this thing that, like, really kind of touched me. He said, a mentality of this too shall pass, whether it's a good thing, like you're in this this horrible funk, sure, this too shall pass, he said. You're in this great mood and everything's fantastic, this too shall pass. And understanding that not everything's always going to be good, not everything's always going to be bad. It gets better, it gets worse. Like, understanding that God's with you through whatever it is, that it's going to pass eventually. Having that understanding helps a lot with getting out of a funk, because a lot of the times you're in the funk because you think something's against you, or you think something's holding you back. Or, like, say with my knee, I kept asking the wrong questions. Why me? Well, everyone goes through stuff, and it's going to pass. If I let it, if I harp on it, it's not going to pass. If I don't give it to God, it's not going to pass. So I just had to give it to him,
Yeah, and I know that in the past you would also mention that you didn't want to reach out to your family members, and so you were kind of sitting in that sadness, and then once you did, you were, like, lifted from that darkness. And so that's like
recently.
Yeah, you had just mentioned that to me a couple of days ago. And so I just encourage anyone, like, just if you're going through something also, like, it's so good to change your mindset and to not just sit and harp on those things, but also reach out to other people and try to get encouragement and be help. Like, other people can help lift you up from that. Just as Jesus can lift you from the sinking water, so can other people in their faith in God and their faith in you as a person. They can build you up and make you feel better. So don't just sit in that by yourself. Like, reach out to other people that are going to encourage you, not a negative crowd. You need to reach out to people like your family that want to encourage you and be there for you, especially during hard times. I know I went through something like a similar mindset when, like, postpartum with me, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when me and Jake's podcast. But the most important thing you can do when you're going through a hard time is to reach out to people that are going to encourage you and be there for you, godly people that will build you up in the right ways. And speaking of other people and, like, who you're surrounding yourself with and everything, I know that there was a time, well, actually, I feel like it's all the time. I hear some people make like little comments about your knee that they're like insults and try to disguise that as jokes. And so, like, what do you have to say to other people who go through a hard time or consistently go through difficulties? And how do you take those jabs from other people, or what's a mindset you think you should have with that? Or just what do you have to say to people that keep getting put down by others?
Well, so whenever you sent me all the questions a couple of days ago, I was actually really glad you asked this question, because it used to affect me a lot. And I used to not talk about it at all. And like, I'm really open about pretty much everything now. Like, mom and dad, especially really recently with mom and dad, I've been just like, there's not a thing I don't talk to them about. You know, if I have an issue, I'm trying my best to talk to them because they're going to give me honest advice and they're looking out for my best interest. Some of my friends, maybe not sometimes, but mom and dad always will.
Yeah.
And so I think with any person who makes you feel self-conscious about whatever situation you're in, whether you have a knee surgery, whether you didn't get that job, whether you and your girlfriend broke up, whether you're going through a divorce, you know, you have to ask yourself, does that person have a valid reason, and where is their heart? Because obviously in my situation, whenever they say things like, you're not 18 anymore, you're not going to be able to walk again.
Yeah.
This is funnier because we know who said this. It makes it funnier, but we're not going to get into that. But so someone said that, you know, like, you're never going to be able to walk again. You're not a 18-year-old, which I'm only 19, by the way. So.
Yeah.
But
you're not 18 anymore. You're 19.
Well, like, obviously in this situation, I didn't ask for it, you know. But one thing, whenever one day someone cracked a joke and it really made me upset, and I tried to talk to God. And at this point, I was listening to God. I used to. I felt like I was listening to God, and we kind of already went over this. Like, I was asking the wrong questions. But God told me, you know, the people of the world they judge unjustly. So the opinion of the world shouldn't sway you one way or the other, but let the just judgment of the Lord sway all your opinions. And so I go to God for advice on anything now, because the opinions of people realistically don't matter. And you can tell if someone has your best interest. Like, if a friend comes up to you and they say, hey, I think you're cussing too much, maybe you should work on that. You can tell where their heart is. They're not being mean whenever they say that. And so their opinion should sway your heart. But if someone goes up to you and they say, oh, you're a horrible person, you're dumb, you know where their heart is. And so their opinion shouldn't sway you, because they are judging unjustly. They're not looking out for your best interest. Their heart's in the wrong place. And so I feel like for me, realizing that and understanding that, once again, all have fallen short, and people are going to make bad comments sometimes. It doesn't affect me anymore, because why should it? You know?
And that's so important to realize, like, what opinions you should take to heart and like grow from, and what opinions you just need to totally disregard. And I think it's so important, you know, to acknowledge. I mean, people say things like that towards others. They'll hide insults. They'll disguise them as jokes to embarrass you, and because they may be insecure by you, or because they literally just have their own insecurities, and that's just like the person that they are. And there's been people in my life that have done that with me, and I just, you know, set those boundaries and realized, okay, I don't need to be around those people very much. And also, I don't really care about their opinion anyways, because, you know, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If someone's going to put you down, they're really not worth the time. So yeah, if you feel like you've gone through hard times, or people are just like, I guess, bullying you in general, just realize that their opinions do not matter. And at the end of the day, if they're going to put you down like that, and to surround yourself by people that are going to like be there for you and hold you accountable in a godly way, in a healthy friendship way, and not toxic way. Those friends that are going to put you down are just insecure, and they're not going to, at the end of the day, their opinion doesn't matter. Only God's at the end of the day. And so, I just encourage you just to look who you're surrounding yourself with. And did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I would say, you know, I don't know who exactly, like, I don't know if Timothy from Tennessee is listening to this. I love how
you're looking at the camera.
I don't know. I like talking to him, you know. But, you know, like, I don't know exactly who I'm speaking to, but I feel like it speaks for everyone whenever I say, me personally, you know, I have some friends that aren't there for me in the way that I'm there for them. And it's pretty obvious whenever that's the case. Some of them I had to distance myself from. Some of them you have to just not take heed in what they say. You know, I have some longtime friends that have said stuff that bothers me. And whenever it bothers me, I have to really evaluate where their heart is. And if their heart's not in the right place, you just cannot take it to heart. And so you might have to distance yourself from people. And so, you know, whoever is listening to this podcast, you may think that these are your only friends, and that if you leave them, you're not going to have any. And then that's not the case. Because I had to leave a lot of people behind whenever I started really working on myself. And it's not a diss at them, because I only hope the best for any friend I've ever had. But for me, I'm in a season of life where I can't entertain the idea that those friendships are good for me.
Yeah.
You can't entertain those people for very long because you're going to bring yourself down.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's so good. And that's also like hardships with friendships too. I mean, just have faith in God and seek God, run towards God, and surround yourself with people that are doing the same thing. And he's going to bless you with different friendships and better friendships, or even fix the friendship that you're having issues with. Just rely on him and have faith in him. And I promise at the end of the day, even if it takes a little bit, have patience and know that he has the best interest for you.
Yeah.
And he already has a plan for all your friendships that you're going to meet. And sometimes friendships are seasonal and that can be hard to deal with, but sometimes that's how it is. But it's just so important to look at your friendships and know that, like, see who you're surrounding yourself with, and that God, if they're not cool, like if they're not encouraging, then it's okay to leave them behind, honestly, if you're trying to grow yourself.
Well, I mean, just being open to friendships, you know?
Yeah.
I have some friends, like, I'll name drop Matt Money.
Aww.
He's running at DBU right now. Me and him have gotten really close this summer, you know?
We love Matt.
And me and him, and it's God gives you the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
Both of us needed to self-reflect on where we were. And I think that he gave me advice and he gave Matt advice that we give each other. That, because like 2 days ago we were laughing about it, like there is no way that I'm giving this advice because I don't apply it to myself, and then that's just God speaking through you to them, and you're also speaking to yourself.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just need to be open to the idea that you can't control who God puts in your life.
Yeah.
But you can control what you do with that person.
Yeah.
And just having that reflection is just really important, you know?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's so good. I really hope I already know this podcast is going to touch at least one person, but I'm sure multiple people, because this is such good advice that you're giving. And it's so great. I'm so glad that you've been on the podcast. I know there's so much stuff on here that is so good that we've self-reflected on those last 3 years, on the difference in your mindset and the growth of your mindset.
Yeah.
And I encourage anyone, like Colton's advice, to self-reflect, to go ahead and do that, because self-reflection will help you grow as a person. And I think that's like super important in your relationship with yourself, and especially your relationship with God. And that will impact your relationship with other people. And to know that if you're going through a hard time, know that God is working through you, and God is refining you, and he is growing you, and there's so much hope in that. And to not lose hope when you go through a hard time, to know that there is hope in that, and God will persevere your life through that, and that your hardships are bigger than you, that God is also working through you because someone else is watching, and someone else needs to see you get up, and someone else needs to see you persevere through that.
Yeah.
And that will impact their life. Your life is definitely bigger than your own. And I love everything that we've talked about also with friendships. God will, if you have faith in God with your friendships and you're chasing after him, he will put the perfect people in your path. And just know that sometimes friends are seasonal, and it's okay to leave them behind, and God's going to put new people in your path that are just going to bless your life so much. And yeah, it's just so important to have that faith in God. And I'm just so encouraged by this podcast, and I'm so grateful I got to be on this podcast today. And thank y'all so much for listening, and thank you for being on the podcast, Colton.
Thanks for having me. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank y'all for being real with us. Thank y'all so much for listening to season 2 of Let's Be Real with Taylor Jones. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow my Instagram at TaylorNJones_ to stay up to date with new and upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening.